This podcast is brought to you by Reynolds and Reynolds, the industry leader in automotive technology. Learn how Spark AI, Reynolds' unified AI data layer, can help you unlock your full potential by visiting rey.com/spark-AI. That's rey.com/spark-AI.
Welcome to Daily Drive for Thursday, January 29th, 2026. I'm Kellen Walker in Las Vegas. Today on the show, Tesla is ending production of its Model S and Model X to make way for robots. Hyundai is pulling the plug on the Santa Cruz pickup after one generation, and Toyota posts record global sales, powered by surging hybrid demand. Plus, Automotive News Asia editor Hans Greimel explains why he doesn't think Japanese K-cars will work in the U.S. market despite President Trump's push.
There is a body structure to these cars, but it's closer to a tin can than to a tank.
Let's run through all the news you need to know to keep up in the auto industry. Tesla is ending production of its Model S sedan and Model X crossover next quarter to make room for something radically different, a humanoid robot factory. CEO Elon Musk announced the move is part of Tesla's shift from car maker to what he calls a physical AI provider. The Model S launched in 2012 and put Tesla on the map. The Model X followed in 2015, but combined with the Cybertruck, sales for those models dropped 40% last year to just over 50,000 units. Musk says Tesla will convert the Fremont factory space into an Optimus robot assembly line, targeting 1 million units annually. The move comes as Tesla reported its first ever annual revenue decline, down 3% in 2025, and a 61% drop in fourth quarter net income. We'll hear more on this story in a minute with our own Lawrence Iliff. Hyundai is also taking the axe to part of its lineup. The Korean automaker is pulling the plug on its Santa Cruz compact pickup after just one generation. Sources tell Automotive News the move comes as sales plunged 20% to 25,500 units last year, outsold 6-1 by Ford's Maverick. Edmunds director Ivan Drury says Hyundai pushed too far in the direction of oddity versus conformity, with design choices that hurt functionality. The automaker isn't abandoning trucks, though. A larger body-on-frame midsize pickup targeting the Tacoma and Ranger launches in summer 2029. Meanwhile, Hyundai's fourth quarter operating profit crashed 40% on U.S. tariffs and EV incentive cuts. Tariffs cost the company 4.1 trillion won last year. That's about 2.8 billion US dollars at today's exchange rate. But investors are betting on Hyundai's humanoid robot plans. Shares jumped 7% despite the weak earnings. And Toyota just posted record global sales, 11.3 million vehicles in 2025. That's up nearly 5%. The big story? Strong U.S. demand helped Toyota blow past the 15% tariff on Japanese imports. Sales there climbed 8%, powered by surging hybrid demand. Toyota ramped up both U.S. production, hitting a record 1.4 million units, and exports from Japan to meet that demand. Hybrids are carrying the load, 4.4 million sold worldwide, while EVs barely moved, just under 200,000. Toyota stayed ahead of Volkswagen and Hyundai to keep its global sales crown in 2025. And those are today's headlines. You can find more details on all those stories at autonews.com. Joining me now to discuss Tesla's decision to end Model S and Model X production is Automotive News reporter Lawrence Iliff, who covers Tesla for us. Lonnie, welcome back to Daily Drive.
It's great to be here.
So, Lonnie, what does ending these flagship models signal for Tesla's future product strategy?
Okay, so they've been talking a lot about making this transition from being an automaker to being a physical IA maker, which means robo-taxis and robots and transportation as a service. And what's really striking about this is really them putting their money where their mouth is. One analyst said, they're, burning their bridges, which I think he meant burning their boats, like this is it, we can't go back. And so they're canceling next quarter the Model S and the Model X. Now, it's both operationally important because now they get that factory space in the Bay Area in AI Central to build their robots. But it's also symbolically important. Remember, this is the Model S was their first volume vehicle after the handmade roadsters, but this was the one that launched them into becoming a real automaker and not just kind of a dreamy startup. And then the Model X came in 2015, three-row SUV. And so, it's important, but it's really a very strong signal rather than just talking about it that they're making this transition.
Well, we've talked many times about how Tesla's aging lineup seems to be hurting sales. Now it's simply tossing out almost, I'd say, half of that lineup. Is there any plan or expectation to replace them with something new?
Now, it's important to remember this is intentional. They had the opportunity 3 years ago, and they talked about it 3 years ago to create a $25,000 car. They were going to start with a factory in Mexico, right? Lower labor cost, lower cost supply base, and then have these factories all over the world. And if there's going to be just insane millions of these $25,000 cars, they changed route. Elon Musk, the CEO, said, nope, okay, we're going to go all in on autonomy. Everything is autonomy. Everything is AI. And so their next car coming before the end of the first half is the Cybercab, which has no steering wheel, no pedals for human controls, completely autonomous. Elon Musk said yesterday on the earnings call, if it doesn't drive autonomously, it doesn't drive. So this is their direction. This is where they're going. They've made, a decision to do this. And somebody was joking, and it's like, we used to say Teslas were fast, sleek cars, faster than a Lamborghini. And now we're going to be saying, oh, look at my airport transportation pod. And so, there's kind of some joking about how they are really becoming a transportation as a service company. And that's not quite as sexy as Tesla, which, if the S3XY, their core cars spell out sexy.
Well, Tesla reported its first ever annual revenue decline and a 61% drop in fourth quarter net income. What's going on there?
And this is really part of the same narrative. And that is that when they sold less cars last year for a second year in a row, their revenue went down for their first year ever. And that's because they're selling less cars, they're putting more discounts on the cars, and they're transferring money, capital expenditures, to their new programs, right? So that costs money. And it's interesting because what they said yesterday, which is kind of surprising, is that their capital expenditures are going to go to $20 billion this year from $8.5 billion last year. And that's AI, that's robotaxis, that's robots, that's chips, that's computers. And they're also making a $2 billion investment in Elon Musk's artificial intelligence startup, xAI.
Perfect. Lonnie, always good stuff. Thank you so much for joining me.
Okay, thank you very much.
You can read Lawrence Iliff's reporting on Tesla at autonews.com. Coming up next, Automotive News Asia editor Hans Greimel explains why he thinks Japanese K cars are doomed to flop in the U.S. despite Trump's push to bring them here. That's next on Daily Drive.
If you're an automotive supplier and you know your team is building the next big thing, prove it on the industry's biggest innovation stage. Automotive News is now accepting applications for the 2026 PACE program. PACE Awards recognize traditional and non-traditional suppliers worldwide for new product, process, and business model innovation, and entries must be innovations already commercialized through a sale to an automaker. Still pre-commercial but past the pilot stage? PACE Pilot recognizes post-pilot, pre-commercial innovations across automotive and future mobility, products, software, IT systems, and processes with the potential to revolutionize an automaker's business. All submissions are reviewed by an independent panel of judges, and MEMA is the exclusive lead sponsor. Ready to be recognized? Apply by February 9th at autonews.com.
When your AI tools are siloed, lost data, duplicate entries, and confusion are inevitable. Spark AI isn't another AI tool to manage. Instead, It's a unified AI data layer, changing the game by ensuring your solutions are making life easier and working at their highest capacity. Don't miss Spark at NADA. Watch Ray, our new AI assistant, bring everything together in one intuitive command center for smart, fast decision-making. Ray answers your questions at any time, providing instant messaging, insights, help videos, or live support. Instantly analyze your sales history and market trends, or generate a sales report with one prompt. You can even ask which cars to buy at auction today for the best return. Schedule an appointment at our booth for everything from a short demo to a full retail management system demonstration using our core AI products. Visit rayray.com/NADA. That's REYREY.com/NADA.
Welcome back to Daily Drive. I'm Kellen Walker. President Trump floated the idea of bringing Japanese K-cars to the U.S. market after his visit to Japan last October. The tiny vehicles are engineered for dense urban areas and affordability. But Automotive News Asia editor Hans Greimel says they're doomed to flop in America. In his latest column, Hans outlines 8 reasons why, from safety concerns to performance issues to structural integrity. Our own Jake Neer reached Hans at his home office in Tokyo.
Hans Greimel, welcome back to Daily Drive. It's been too long.
Yes, it has been. Thanks for having me on.
So when I heard that you were writing a piece, 8 reasons Japanese K-cars won't make it here in the United States, my question was this: only 8?
Oh,
But
man of my own spirits there. Yes, I see what you're saying.
my own cynicism kicking things off here. But in all seriousness, we'll let people go and read your article on autonews.com and see all 8. But if you had to pick 1 or 2, what are sort of the biggest barriers for these kinds of cars for the United States market?
Well, I shouldn't be too hard on these K cars, these Japanese mini cars, because they are kind of ingenious. They're kind of a masterclass in packaging. They're interesting designs. They're not my cup of tea, but they really do a lot with a little. In Japan, they're quite functional and convenient, and the people who love their K cars love their K cars here. So there is an audience for it, and there probably is a customer base for them in the United States, but a very small one, I would guess. That's largely because of the reasons that they're probably not appealing to the majority of Americans. It starts with everything from their tiny size to their tiny engines and their underperformance on freeways, their slow speeds. They're not especially cheap. They're low price, but they're not especially considered a bargain for what you're getting in terms of a car. The design is a little bit off for Americans as well. And then there's just kind of the safety concern about driving this kind of lunchbox on a modern American freeway surrounded by semi-trucks and Ford 150 pickups. So there are a lot of things I could imagine that would keep these off American shopping lists.
Now, don't get me wrong. I actually think that these are they're in a lot of ways, like you said, they're pretty ingenious for a lot of markets, especially really, really dense urbanized areas of the world. They're inexpensive, which is a huge issue here in the United States. But as you said, it's mostly for me just the, knowing the American car buyer in 2026. I can see why it would be a tough road ahead. Now, remind us why we're talking about K cars again. They piqued President Trump's interest recently. Why was that?
He had a summit meeting here in Japan last October where he came to meet the new prime minister. And he was in Japan traveling around for a bit. And after returning to the United States, he was looking for ways to increase, let's say, Japanese investment in the auto industry in the United States. That was one of the big themes he was talking about here. And he saw the K cars. He learned that they were affordable. Affordability is a big issue in the United States as well. So he thought, why not kill 2 birds with 1 stone, invite the Japanese to America to build their affordable K cars in the USA? And, what could go wrong? There are lots of people, car buffs in the United States, who are enamored with these small K cars. But I can't see them ever catching on in a serious or at serious volumes.
So let's talk a little bit more about the safety aspect of this. You mentioned that K cars, they have a lot of safety, like latest safety tech in them. So there's one thing, but when it comes to physics, can you kind of elaborate on, the scenario here in the United States, maybe a collision with an F-150 or something like that? It seems like, for one thing, it would obviously consumers care about safety, but also regulators would probably have a lot of questions too.
Well, let's talk about safety a little bit, because these cars, at least the top trim versions of these cars, have all this modern safety, doodads. They've got the automatic lane keep assist, adaptive cruise control, auto pre-crash safety braking, and everything that you think you'd want probably even in a bigger car like a Toyota Camry or something. But, people here drive differently on different roads than they do in the United States. People here drive very slowly. The speed limits are very low compared to the United States, even on the interstate. And perhaps more importantly, people here drive very politely, and they almost never break the rules. They're not cutting each other off. They're not racing each other from the stoplights. It's a very rule-abiding society in Japan, and you don't have the streets as a kind of a Wild West kind of mentality among the drivers on the streets here. So when these cars crash, when a K car crashes into a K car at 30 miles per hour, you're going to have a fender bender. But in the United States, if you bring your K car up to 50, 60 miles per hour on the highway, and you intertwine with anything a little bigger than it, which will be everything else on the highway, you're going to be in a world of hurt. The overhangs on these cars are basically non-existent, especially in the rear. It's just like the rear seat backs where the kids are is literally the back up against the door. And then the front has almost no space as well, because usually they try to push the driver as far to the front as possible, almost so that they're sitting right over the engine. So there's not a lot of structural integrity to these cars to keep you safe. I kind of think of the old-fashioned Volvo with the giant steel cage, inside to protect the driver. There is a body structure to these cars, but it's closer to a tin can than to a tank.
You compare it in the piece to a Yugo. Is that, talk about why you make that comparison and why you think it's fair?
Well, it's partly fair just because of the size of the car, the size of the engine, the acceleration speed, the performance of the cars. But it's probably not fair because the Yugo, while as the Yugo was a rattle trap, poor quality car made in the Eastern Bloc, these cars have all the benefits of first class world first class Japanese manufacturing and quality control. So you're not going to have to worry about your K car breaking down or not starting one morning or having bad fit and finish and things like that. But in terms of performance, the average American is going to be a little disappointed.
Yeah, I think you said in the piece about 64 horsepower or 660 cc engines. Is that about right for these?
That's right. That's what they're limited to. The idea of bringing them to the United States, if you were going to make them there, I don't know what kind of K car they're talking about. Maybe they have a U.S. spec K car, for example, in which case they can maybe wiggle with the dimensions, maybe, or with the engine specifications, maybe, or other technical dictates to the car. I can't see them bringing lock, stock, and barrel the exact same K car that they sell here and trying to sell it in the United States. Maybe they'd have to tweak it some way to make it a little bit bigger, a little wider, put a bigger engine in it, increase the overhangs for some crush zones on the front and back. Maybe then they could create a new class called an American K car or something like that. But it's a lot different from just a Japanese one.
Yeah, that's such an interesting idea that maybe this says something about the direction that automakers are seeing here in the US market, or maybe sort of an aspirational direction that maybe it's not like we need to start offering, these sort of, well, okay, this might not be fair, but I was going to say glorified golf carts on the roads. but maybe we can learn some things from these models that would work for the U.S. Do you think that that's a possible realistic expectation? That again, maybe not as small and boxy, but maybe we get closer to something like that still fits American tastes.
They could do that. I know that the Japanese apply a lot of the manufacturing techniques that they learn from mini cars, or some of the packaging ideas that they learn in mini cars they take to the regular cars as well. So there is some learning, cross-fertilization of the learning there. But Japan has a whole class of cars one step up, that are even considered and that were once sold in the United States, but are now considered even too small for the United States. We're talking cars like remember the Honda Fit, or the Toyota Yaris, or even something like the Mazda 2. But those were deemed too cheap, or too underperforming, or too small even for American audiences, because they have grown into loving SUVs. Basically, there's a crossover culture there now, and those small cars, the small hatchbacks, the small sedans, don't appeal. So even if the Japanese were to go one step up, that would basically mean a whole class of cars that they already make but decided to give up on in the U.S.
All right, Hans, any last words on the K cars before we wrap up here?
Well, one of the things that I often get frustrated with K cars is that as you go into the countryside, especially, they're everywhere like cockroaches. That's the car of the countryside, because people just want something like a small functional thing to take them down the road to the grocery store and back, or farmers use them a lot. And so if you're on vacation in Japan and driving out in the countryside, it's a great place to be driving until you get behind one of these K cars. They go so slow that it's very aggravating to be stuck behind one of them, especially when you're out in the countryside trying to enjoy the winding roads and have a little bit of driving fun on vacation.
It's so different than the U.S. You think of the countryside here in America, and it's nothing but F-150s and Silverados and all the above. So thank you very much, Hans. Really appreciate this. Really love the column. It's called 8 Reasons Japanese K Cars Are Doomed to Flop in the U.S. Despite Trump's Push. You can find that at autonews.com. Thanks again, Hans.
Thanks a lot, Jake. Have a good one.
That's Daily Drive for today. I'm Kellen Walker. Thanks to automotive news journalists Lawrence Iliff and Urvash Kakaria for their reporting for today's podcast. You can get the latest news on vehicle affordability, automaker product shifts, and everything happening in the auto industry at autonews.com. Come back tomorrow for a conversation with Cox Automotive's Jessica Stafford about the company's latest car buyer journey study.
We're seeing record high satisfaction across all buyers, but particularly new car buyers.
We'd love to hear from you. Let us know what you think of the show and the topics we covered today. Send us an email at dailydrive@autonews.com or leave us a voicemail at 313-444-2774. And if you enjoy the podcast, remember to like, leave a review, and subscribe so you never miss an episode.